Those of you who have been on my channel for a while may have seen some War Thunder content in the past, and I used to play quite a bit of air sim, and honestly it can be quite an enjoyable game mode. There are big lobbies with a ton of people playing fighters, and when you get in one of those and everybody's dogfighting and you have these massive fur balls and there's a lot of communication, teamwork, it can be an amazing experience. And even the pretty big BR spread and some of the things that are seen as more negative aspects of the game mode can still be entertaining. I have been in engagements against phantoms in an ME-163, and that may sound unfair to some, but I've also managed to shoot down a Mirage in one, which was pretty incredible. And even things like bombing, which takes quite a bit longer and is a pretty essential part of the game mode, can be a lot more fun in Sim than it is in RB. I gave up bombing in RB a very, very long time ago and exclusively played fighters, but in Sim I'll still run both because I enjoy the relaxing nature of bombing and picking out a plan for a flight path and a little bit of the way that the enemy team can counter you, how you can choose an approach. There's a little bit of more strategy to it, and it's not quite as punishing since you still have mouse aim for your gunners, but everybody else actually has to line up successful shots on you using a joystick. It could even be a little overpowered in that regard, but it definitely brings some life back into what was basically dead content for me. But after playing for a while, I ran into problems that eventually made me leave the game mode. There were quite a few bugs with how the AI worked, how things were spotted. Airfield strafing in Sim is massive at high tiers, and there is no counter, and it is dead-ass easy. You can float on the enemy side of the map and just scout out airfields, see a dot, dive, hit the deck, and as long as you're going around 1,000 kilometers an hour, you don't even need to worry about AA. The airfields will start flashing if somebody is strafing you, and there is this tiny little siren, but if anyone's actually doing it actively, it's way too late. That's like a delayed reaction at best, and at that point you're usually around 10 seconds at most from being killed. And there has been no answer to this. Sim is like most aspects of War Thunder in that it's kind of abandoned by Gaijin in terms of the game mode. They focus on putting out new toys to get people interested, and they don't really take much into consideration when it comes to the game design of each game mode. And Enduring Confrontation in Sim is actually one of the game modes that they've paid the most amount of attention to because it's one of the most recent ones and one of the ones that's undergone the most changes since release. But even then, for the past couple of years, there's been almost nothing. And there have been some pretty game-breaking bugs. And then there are some reasons more specific to me for why I stopped playing. I started taking it a bit too seriously, if we're being honest. I am a competitive person and I love dogfighting, so when I would die to a bug, it would kind of infuriate me, especially if I was playing something like a Phantom, which was the most OP aircraft in the game, and I could easily go probably 10 to 20 to 1 in terms of KD in this plane, back when it didn't have as many counters. And yet, in reality, I would go closer to 5 to 1 because I'd be airfield strafed or bugs would push me into the ground when I was flying at Mach speed with a bit of packet loss or whatever. The fact that a majority of my deaths were, in my eyes, illegitimate started really frustrating me. I don't really care about that anymore, and I'll admit it was petty of me, but there are various reasons why I left. And first and foremost among those reasons was my unwillingness to grind. Everybody knows that this is just another free-to-play game that's designed to frustrate you into paying. It's a given. I don't need to discuss that. But regardless, after I left for a little while, I saw the update, I saw that new Harriers were coming out and stuff. My immediate thought was those would be fun as hell to fly in Sim, and I started making my way back. And I made something of a discovery. When I was playing it the first time around, I made a promise to myself that I would never grind. If I didn't have an aircraft, I would not try to get that aircraft. I would only play something because it was exactly what I wanted to play at that moment. And as a result, yes, I would unlock other aircraft, and that was nice, but that was never my intention, because the moment you play a game like this with the intention of grinding is the moment you're going to hate yourself and leave it forever. And that worked fine back in the day, but when I came back, I discovered that things have changed. I'm not going to rant about this for too long, but I was absolutely furious when I came back and got through my first 2 to 3 matches. I have what I accomplished in those matches listed out here, and I want you to bear in mind that I died once during all of this. This all takes place over the course of 2 to 3 matches. I had premium for about half of it. Most of the ordnance dropped I had premium for, most of the air kills I did not, so keep that in mind. And I died once in a Phantom. I dropped 80,000 pounds of ordnance on airfields, and yes, I know how sim works, and I know how to hit modules in airfields. They were all hits. These were all 1,000 to 2,000 pound bombs. I also got around 7 to 8 player kills and around 7 to 8 AI kills. During all of this, I died once in a Phantom. I started, when I loaded sim back up for the first time, with around 80,000 lions. And after doing all of that, when I checked my balance, I was at less than 20,000. Yeah, I know. You're confused. I was confused. How the actual fuck does that happen? And there are answers. The way this game calculates the cost is not through repairing, it's through spawning in the first place. So the fact that I used multiple planes to accomplish this hinders the accomplishments. Now, regardless of the fact that I only died once, what I would do is oftentimes I would take something like a B-17 out, do 2 bomb loads, and then switch to a B-29, do 1 bomb load, then switch to a Phantom, and get 3 kills. So even though I technically did well in each of those aircraft, the fact that I took 3 aircraft out, some of which are quite expensive, hindered me, even if I didn't die in all of them. But the main issue isn't the spawn costs, because the spawn costs are relatively modest. It's half of the repair cost of the vehicle, which can be extreme for some vehicles, but for most isn't too big of an issue. The issue is that they have seriously nerfed lion gains. You have to do exceptionally well in that aircraft to make your lions back, and in a game mode like Sim, where you're spending hours in a match, the fact that you have to go take off from your airfield in a B-17 and do 2 successful bombing runs to break even on lions is ridiculous, because that is an absolute huge investment of time. I know if you continue to proceed to go and do that more, you'll make lions, but at such a pitiful rate that it really doesn't matter. Now that I understand a bit more about the way that the costs are influenced, which, by the way, I never had to learn before because it was never a problem. I just did well in the game mode and made money. But now that it's exceptionally hard to make money and I'm learning how to play the economy a little bit better, I am going positive on average per match. But it is such a minuscule amount compared to the amount of things that I'm accomplishing that I am in serious debt because of the amount of RP I've gained rather than lions. If you take a look at my tech tree here, you can see a shit ton of unpurchased jets, and that's because the RP gains in this game mode are still quite fair. It still competes with RB. It might not be technically quite as good, but in terms of time played to RP return, it's pretty nice. It's much better than lions, and so as you can see, I've been completing my tech tree and unable to buy shit, because even modifications for planes are so ridiculously expensive that if I do somewhat well in my Phantom, chances are I'm going to lose lions because of the amount of modifications I research and then need to purchase. It is just night and day difference between RP gains and lion gains right now. And as a result, if I want to be able to play consistently and use even the existing lineups that I already have while never paying to create new lineups or paying to get new planes, if I want to play consistently, I either have to do quite well, which is okay for me because I have quite a bit of experience in this game mode and I can usually pull my weight, or I have to specifically go out and grind lions, which directly works against my philosophy the last time around. The reason I have these lions here is because I learned how to cheese the system. They nerfed the absolute fuck out of lion games from bomb drops, but rockets are still totally usable. So if you grab a Phantom with 285 Mighty Mouses, well, each of these individual hits counts for something. And counts for, in a lot of cases, more than the actual weight of the ordnance. So the amount of hits you can get on a target actually matters quite a bit in determining how many lions you get from a match. So if I go into a fairly empty sim lobby and I lob these at airfields all day, I can make around 250 to 500k an hour, which is pretty damn good. It's actually closer to the 250 mark, especially when you consider that you have to grind to get the plane and then you have to not crash it, which is a bit of a challenge when you're landing a Phantom time after time after time after time. It's a difficult plane to land. And on average, you'll probably get less than that. And you'll definitely get significantly less of that if you don't have a plane in which you can strap an absolute metric fuck ton of rockets to. But in the end, I have a way that I can cheese the system and gain lions. And the irony of it is that the reason why Gaijin nerfed so much of the lion gain in Sim is because of people doing exactly that. It's because people would go into an empty lobby and take something like a B-57, which carries 8 1,000-pound bombs, and do constant bomb drops on the airfield. They'd gain a ton of lions doing this, and they wouldn't really have too much competition besides the AI that spawns in and the airfield AA. And so what Gaijin could have done is a million things, right? If they didn't want to develop anything, then they could have just changed the minimum number of players required to get into a lobby, or they could have reduced rewards when there wasn't a certain number of players met in a lobby, or they could have reduced the amount of options you have for creating custom lobbies in Sim. If you guys don't know how that works, I'll show you here. You can essentially create lobbies in Sim, and some people will deliberately do something like this. This is a perfect example right now. Southeast Asian servers, so that not very many people see it. One nation on opposition, so that once it fills with the 2 required players to start the match, it's very unlikely that additional players will join. And then every other nation on the other team, so that these guys can just grind the absolute fuck out of the system and make a ton of lions. Now this is fairly exploitative, and it makes sense why Gaijin would want to limit the options for doing this, but in doing so, they just effectively fucked over the entire game mode as a whole. They could have done a million things. Like I said, they could have changed the way that this works and limit the team options, or they could have just gone all the way to doubling down on only the already existing lobbies that can't be manipulated by players, which almost always fill up to a reasonable extent. There are solutions they could have done in-game as well. They could have added something like very rapid-fire autocannons that would radar track for AA, and that would fix so many issues that are already there with top-tier Sim by allowing the airfields to actually have a counter against jets flying at Mach speeds at 500 meters altitude. If you had to deal with a hail of 30mm rounds coming at you that were, accurately fired, even that might not save you. Or if that wasn't good enough and, forcing people to climb higher and spend more time in their bomb run to get bombs on targets wasn't a good enough compromise, they could have added surface-to-air missiles, radar-guided, something that's fairly easy to dodge in and of itself, but does prevent you from going in a straight line on a bombing run, thus adding a little bit of change to the gameplay of bombing with jet bombers. If this was locked to tier 6, it wouldn't affect prop bombers, which would obviously be very much a victim to this kind of thing. And you could even start to change the game mode into something that resembles a PvE experience for bombing airfields. That way, yes, even though there are 2 people in an empty lobby grinding, they're having to work and strategize and actually fight the game itself in order to make that RP or those lions, thus making it more fair. They also could have just reduced the output of bombs, or the lions for the output of bombs, for only tier 6 rather than across the board. It is in no way reasonable at all to justify taking out a B-17 right now. There's no way in hell that you are going to survive enough bomb loads in a row to make your money back and make a significant amount of profit. And even if you are able to do that, the time cost is so ridiculous that it doesn't compare at all whatsoever to doing it in a jet bomber or just going and playing RB. And I mean, the development time doesn't even need to be that extreme. There's already some PvE elements when you play in a empty lobby. There's already AI that will come after you. And if they just added a bit more logic to those AI, where they would see where airfields are being damaged and move to intercept bombers, they could even cheat the system a little bit and take the average of your altitude when you were dropping those bombs and specifically have the AI target those altitudes. There's a million ways that they could counter that didn't just destroy Sim further. And as I said, this is the irony of the situation, is because they tried to counter that by fucking over every Sim player. Now, personally, my only option, if I want to play Sim and make money at a reasonable enough pace to be able to even purchase the new content that's coming out, the Harriers, is to go and abuse the system. Before, if I was joining a Sim lobby, I would immediately just look for one of the most populated ones that I was in. So, for example, this would be a decent one, right? US and Italy against most other nations, 6v6. That could be a fun time, and I'd play predominantly fighters. Or I could go down to one of the default ones, which are usually fairly well popped, like Afghanistan here. Yeah, 10 against 10. This is a fun one. I mean, it's always against Russia, so you know who you're trying to spot. These would be my desired lobbies. But now going in, because I want to get the Harrier, I am exclusively looking for these types of lobbies here where I can grind things out in my Phantom for a while so I can have the money to actually be able to play new things in Sim. And then we're really just scratching the surface level Lion issues. I mean, yes, I can't buy new planes that I'm grinding, but I also can't make new lineups. Take a look at Great Britain, right? Most of my lineups here I have EC 1 through 6, or at least something close to it. If I want to make those for Great Britain, I have to pay the crew costs for planes to be able to actually be in a lineup. I'm from Air RB, so I'm used to putting all of my fighters into this slot. But now, for something like EC4, I'm going to have to pick a 5.0 Spitfire or two and put them here and here. I'll want my best bomber probably over here. And before I know it, I've spent 150k on crew training. And that's going to be 2 standard sim games in which I do exceptionally well to make back, or it's going to be roughly 30 to 40 minutes of abusing the system in a Phantom to make back. The Lion costs in this game are everywhere because it's a game designed to frustrate you into paying every little thing. Repairs, crews, they'll make you pay anywhere they can. And in the end, if I decide that I want to play my Germans, and I actually want to get down this MiG line that I've been working on a little bit and actually get my MiG-19S, I have to consider that by the time the Harrier comes out, if it's another 1 million Lion jet with another, 300,000 for crew training, I am essentially needing 4 million Lions to purchase this, and the Harrier, assuming it ends up here, and put it into my slot. So before I can even think about spending the money on that MiG-19, that's going to be my priority. And by the time I actually grind all of that out in the German line, I am going to have significantly more jets that need purchased. I'm just forever a step behind in what I can accomplish in terms of actually getting new aircraft. And all of this is coming from somebody who already has a Phantom. I have friends who have been trying to get into Sim, and I just can't justify it unless they're sitting on top of a mountain of Lions, and then they can benefit from getting quick RP and actually buying a few things pretty quickly. Unless they have something like this where they can abuse the system for Lion gains, they have to play other game modes to fund Sim. And then it gets worse because I really just can't see this changing. I mean, helicopters have come out, and I just spent a lot of time setting up my sim controls for them because I enjoy flying helicopters, but there's no way to use them. The only way that you can fly a helicopter in sim is if the ground sim battles have a helicopter option. There's usually a high tier one, and it usually has a couple. Like, yeah, here, for example. But between the amounting Lion costs, if I wanted to actually grind through the heli tree and actually buy some of these things, which are all 400k a piece or beyond, yeah, you guys see the problem. I'm already in debt trying to get a Harrier, and now any thought of getting anything in addition is just a pipe dream for way down the line, unless I throw my wallet at the problem. And with that said, you can see how this all comes full circle. Gaijin doesn't develop the game modes, so they're buggy as hell because they're too busy spending time developing new toys, which work because they got me back into the game. And then the economy frustrates people into paying for those new toys, which in turn funds them to go put out new toys, and the cycle repeats. The game modes get neglected, the core experience disintegrates, but they make more money from every individual player. If all of the issues with EC were fixed, I would play it a ton more. And I would also spend less money on the game, because right now, I honestly think I'm just going to buy the Harrier. I don't really have the patience to grind things out anymore. I already established that I was never going to go back to doing that when I got back into Sim. And so I'm going to be a part of the problem. I am going to in turn fund the things that I hate. And that's why I'm making this video, because I cannot justify in my eyes putting out cool looking content of me flying a Harrier in Sim over the next couple of weeks, and knowing that some people are going to think that it's worth getting into this game mode, that looks like a lot of fun, and maybe I should pick up this game, or maybe I should start giving sim battles a try, without understanding the full story. So then why am I here? Why am I playing it if I don't think that you guys should be? Well, I thought it would be simple. I thought I'd hop in, spend a little bit of time, maybe grind out the new Phantom, maybe try out the new radar-guided missiles that I haven't seen, or AIM-9Js, and I figured that just through casual play and just through enjoying myself, once again getting into playing Phantoms in Tier 6, which is quite an enjoyable experience, I would be able to purchase both of these jets and be ready to research the Harrier, which wouldn't be my main focus, but would definitely be something that I progressed to while I focused predominantly on experimenting with Phantoms and maybe putting a couple of videos out with the new content that I've missed. I assumed that it would be that simple. And now here I am being suckered into buying things if I want to be able to actually showcase that on my channel and show you guys how it flies in Sim. Yes, before anyone says, I've looked into DCS, I've looked into IL-2, I'm probably going to start playing those games in the future. There are significantly better ways to get your jet or your prop plane fix than this game. But War Thunder is pretty quickly accessible if you've already sunk as much time as I have into it and you already have the top tier stuff, at least so I thought. So here I am, getting back into it, playing a few games, and enjoying myself in the times when it is enjoyable. So I'll probably continue playing it despite my problems with the company, but I couldn't sleep easy if I didn't warn you guys about all of this shit going on behind the scenes. Anyway, with another rant video concluded to add to my channel of constant salt and bitchiness, I'll see you guys in the next one.